Strange things happen to surnames when you come to America. I don't know. Somewhere down the line, somebody in the family decided they had to be different and call it Riordan rather than Riordan. But you're absolutely right. County Cork is where the family is originally from, and it should be Riordan. But who knows? For some reason, it's not.
So today, I want you to call me Riordan. Great to see all of you here. This is Rick's first Comic-Con, and before we start, what's your impression?
I am so relieved that there are 137,000 people even geekier than I am. Thank you guys. It's so nice. I feel like I've come home. So, no, it's a wonderful experience.
Your favorite costume so far?
Oh, wow. Favorite costume. I have to say, I liked the Pope yesterday. I don't know if you saw him. He was on the stairs giving everyone the benediction. I didn't know that he had his own comic series, but apparently he's a very big comic. I know.
Let's talk about Rick Riordan for a second. What's very, very interesting is that many, many fantasy readers become fantasy writers, more than in any other genre. So that means that some of you guys are going to become writers. Anyone here writing? Thinking about writing? Going to write? Okay. How did you start?
I was a fantasy reader as a kid, and just as you said. I have to say, though, I was a reluctant reader when I was young. I was not one of the kids who ran to the library and read everything I could get my hands on. I didn't really like reading all that much when I was very young. That changed when I discovered The Lord of the Rings. That was the first series that I read where it occurred to me that reading could be something that one did for pleasure and not just because the teacher assigned it. And from there I got into Greek mythology, Norse mythology, found other fantasies, Wizard of Earthsea, C.S. Lewis, Out of the Silent Planet was one of the first science fiction books I read. And from there I got into mysteries and kind of took off.
You mentioned mysteries. I mean, my introduction to you was reading the Trace of Ireland novels, which some of you here haven't read, which are really, really very funny, very dark crime novels. Is it a big leap for you from doing the Trace of Ireland to Percy?
It's sort of going back to my roots in a way, because I started reading fantasy and science fiction, and then when I got into college, my mother handed me a Robert B. Parker novel, one of the Spencer novels, and that was my introduction into the private eye genre. I started reading Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler and got into that whole tradition. And so the first thing that I tried to write was, in fact, a private eye novel set in San Antonio featuring Trace Navarre. But going back into fantasy, that's not something that occurred to me for a long, long time. I think I needed some distance because, you know, I don't know about you guys, but when I was young, I tried to write fantasy, and of course, everything that I wrote sounded like The Lord of the Rings. Just change the names and you say the same thing. I guess I needed some distance, but Percy Jackson did, I think, benefit from the private eye novels because he has the same kind of first-person narration, this sort of sarcastic sense of humor that I would use with my private eye. So that's what Percy inherited from the mystery genre.
Well, Percy has great pacing, great energy that pushes you through the story. I mentioned earlier on that many of the young people here will be writers or want to be writers. What is your writing routine? People are always fascinated with how writers write.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, and I'd be interested in hearing what your routine is, because every writer I talk to, I mean, no one has the same routine. I know people that write everything on a legal tablet by hand. I know people that only word process, people that do no outline at all, people that have to have a 50-page outline before they'll even think of writing chapter 1. I'm somewhere in the middle. My process is developed, but I do tend to write a fairly short outline. I write maybe a paragraph for each chapter. I usually have in mind the settings that I'm going to use. Usually I know the monsters or the gods that will appear in the book, and I figure out where to put them and what makes the most sense. I'll spend maybe a month outlining everything and researching. Then I write a really, really sloppy first draft just to get through with it. That is maybe 2 months. The rest of the year is spent revising. That's the majority of my time is rewriting and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. My teachers used to tell me that you couldn't do it right the first time. Well, they were right. You know, I've written, what, 15 books now, I still can't write it on the first draft. So If you guys are writing, don't get discouraged. If you don't write it perfectly the first time, nobody does.
Do you write the ending? Do you know the ending?
It's interesting. I think I know the ending, but it often changes to some extent or another. One time when I was writing a mystery novel, the person who did it changed 3 times. Usually with Percy Jackson, I know it a little bit more, but still, details surprise me. I remember being in the middle of The Last Olympian, the last Percy Jackson book, and suddenly it occurred to me what one of the main characters was doing in the series. I mean, I'd never really seen what her point was. This is Rachel Elizabeth Dare. And I didn't know that she was going to be the Oracle. And suddenly it occurred to me, that's why she's in the series. That's her role. So I hope I didn't ruin any huge thing for anybody.
Just as a complete aside, I have used Elizabeth Dare in The Necromancer by Oscar. And she had been in it right from the very beginning, and I plotted these in great detail many, many years ago. And of course I'm reading, I knew Rick Riordan, and I come across, and I go, oh, she was there, what am I going to do? And I did think for a long time I'm going to have to pull her in. Because of course when writers are playing with historical characters, often we play with the same historical characters. When you were conceiving Percy, did you ever imagine it was going to be a multi-book series?
I'm a series reader. I like reading series, and my adult mysteries were in a series for that reason. So I wasn't surprised when ideas began to occur to me for books beyond the Lightning Thief. However, I wasn't really intending to write a book at all. The Lightning Thief really began as a bedtime story for my son, and it was impromptu, off the top of my head. He liked Greek mythology, he was struggling with ADHD and dyslexia, and I decided to sort of put everything together and make up something that he would enjoy and hopefully keep him interested in school. That became The Lightning Thief. He inspired me to write it down, and it kind of went from there. Once I was into the manuscript, I realized fairly quickly that it would make a good series.
So do you have the ultimate ending? Did you have the ultimate ending in mind when you said it?
Yes and no. I knew that he was going to be 16. I knew the choice he would have to make. I knew how it would end up. But the details are always organic. They don't always appear to me in one fell swoop. So yeah, it is kind of a combination. I have to have enough structure so I know where I'm going, but also enough mystery about it that I'm not bored of the book before I even begin writing it. I like some things to be revealed to me as I'm reading.
Is he your favourite character in the series? Because often writers don't, their main character is not their favourite. Often it's a secondary character who sometimes comes in and takes over. Is he yours?
I relate to Percy on a lot of levels. His voice is my voice, his humor is my humor. But if I had to pick one character, I'd probably pick Tyson the Cyclops. He's so sweet, and he makes me laugh every time I write it. I mean, he probably is more of a character that I would just want to hang out with, peanut butter sandwiches for.
Isn't there a danger always that some of those characters, when they come onto the page, do threaten to take over, and you have to deliberately pull them back?
Yeah, they do. Some of the personalities are very, very strong in the series, and when you have so many, it can be hard to remember where to put the spotlight. And again, it's funny. I've heard other authors say that they can't imagine ever letting a character take over. Like they sort of have this disdain. Well, how could you possibly let that happen? They're your creations. They don't push you around. Well, mine do.